Canada and the United States just released their jobs numbers, and we are all shocked by them. The economists are shocked by them. This is going a long way into fighting inflation. So, we're going to be diving in today the US jobs report, the Canadian jobs report, what's happening with the inverted yield curves, what's happening on the DXY, and all the things that you're going to need to know about on how you're going to set yourself up for your financial future. All right, let's get into it, you guys. If we check in our first article of the day, this is for the Bank of Canada. It might have to rethink that rate pause as unemployment remains very low. Again, we're going to go into the US in just a second, but Canada had a very, very high jobs number. And remember, those rates cannot come down. I think that we have to take a pause here. It doesn't matter if we're talking about Canada or the United States, they are very clear what their mission is. Number one, they need a lot higher unemployment. They need more people without a job. Remember, the United States wants 4.5% by the end of this year, which means that they're going to be having to put what they would like is 2 million people out of work. Now, they never say they want you to go out of work. They're going to tell you that we need a softening in the job market. What does that mean? Or we need the job market to come into balance. So I understand if there isn't enough people to hire for you in your business, you got to keep on upping the wage that you're offering until somebody will get hired. I understand that, but they're going at this by trying to wreck businesses, and we're seeing banks fall one after another. They need high unemployment. This is what they need, and they need all of the wage increases to stop. All right, this is what they need. All right, so let's continue on here. The labor market is showing no sign of the slowdown, according to CTV News. It says the Bank of Canada is hoping for to get inflation down to 2%. So if the labor market does not slow down, it cannot get to 2%. Employment rose by 41,000 jobs in April, but all the gains were made in part-time work. Please note that. Exactly the same with the United States. Part-time is very strong. All right, if we jump back in, meanwhile, the unemployment rate held steady at 5% for the fifth consecutive month. So as they continue to raise those rates, it is not slowing down employment. If this persists through the spring, the Bank of Canada may yet be forced to rethink rate pause. So again, we're going to be stuck, right? We got to raise these rates or we have to have higher unemployment. The central bank has been warning that a tight labor market will make it more difficult to get inflation back to 2%. And as higher wages put forward upward pressure on prices. Same thing. We need nobody to get a raise. We need a lot of people to go without jobs. This is what they need. Moreover, population growth has been propping up employment numbers for months as Canada welcomes new immigrants. This is a well-documented problem. Canada brought in a record number of people, 1 million people. United States, there's a ton of people coming to the States. They're getting 1 million people a year too. And so as they jump into the job market, it's fudging all the numbers all around. So, we might one day even see that it's in negative territory. Like unemployment will be, instead of 1% of the population, will be like minus 1% or something like that, because there may be 1 million jobs, but there's 1.2 million people working. And you're like, how is that? And it's all because of a lot of the people who may be illegal on their status or something like that. If we continue on, the tight labor market is putting upward pressure on wages. Average hourly wages are up 5.2%, growing faster than inflation. This is the wage spiral we're talking about. It's always the same things. Most wage growth measures remain around 4 to 5%, unless productivity grows, surprises us with strong increase, which it's not. Persistent wage growth in that range will make it difficult to achieve 2%. So we can't continue. Just remember, we're going to hear this coming up over and over again. No more wage increase. We're going to see more part-timers, more people on their status, illegals or something, taking jobs that are fudging the numbers, more immigrants or refugees that are coming in and fudging the numbers. This is the exact same news that the United States is making. So for Canada, when we're looking at this huge jobs gain, it blew all the expectations out of the water, 41,000 jobs. But remember, the biggest gains are in part-time work. So this could be people taking on a part-time job because the cost of living is way too expensive for them to even afford things now, because a lot of people are getting a second and third job. So having a second high amount of people having jobs, like people with 2 or 3 jobs, they're counting them as if it's 2, 3 different people. This is the problem in Canada and the United States. So it may not be something to brag about that these numbers are the way they are. It may be that the market is so tight and inflation is so hard on people that they're all getting forced to take 2 and 3 jobs. But that's not reflected in the job numbers. But it's very funny to me that the majority of it is in part time work. Let's go to the United States. This is the Bureau of Labor Statistics. If we take a look at the chart last year, they were having 6% unemployment. And look at where we are now. So, as those rates, and the United States, remember, have raised rates 10 times. Not like Canada, wimpy Canada with 8 raises. They did it 10. And even though they're doing that, unemployment is still going below 3.5%. Unbelievable, crazy. And so the joblessness numbers are, I don't know, shocking. Very, very low. Now let's look at where did those jobs go. This is Canada is the exact same. Okay, it's professional and services, healthcare, leisure and hospitality, which that's going to go away when we go into a crunch. Social assistance added 25,000 jobs. Financial activities, which is, did you see insurance carriers? This isn't about having more bank workers. They're all getting cut. Government hired 23,000. And so it's good to know where they're going. Not really, really surprising. All right. So there's a whole bunch of numbers. We don't have to read that. There was 2 questions I wanted just to show you because I think it's important for us to know where this stuff is coming from. Here, are undocumented immigrants counted in the surveys? And this is the question that we keep hearing because Canada and the United States are running into these problems all the time. It is likely that both surveys, at least some undocumented immigrants, are there. Now, whether they are or not, this is not a political channel. It's not left or right. The fact is, though, is that when people are coming into your country illegally, the country does not know they're there. They're taking jobs, they're working, and those numbers are counted in this. And that's why I was saying, like, you may have 1 million jobs available on your country in the books, but it says like, or 1 million adults that could work, and there's 1.2 million people working. You have to be scratching your head going, hang on a second. And so Canada just brought in 1 million people that we know of, let alone the undocumented ones. And so all of those people are starting to work, but it fudges the numbers. So my point is when you read these reports, you kind of have to read it with maybe not just a grain of salt, but maybe the entire salt shaker. It just gives you a clue. You can't base everything that you're going to invest in based on this. Also, why does the establishment survey have revisions? This is another important point, that why you can only trust these reports so much is because when they are going to do that, they're going to go backwards a month or two and revise their numbers. And sometimes it's quite shocking numbers. Like they may adjust their numbers from 500,000 all the way down to 350,000, like take a whole third off of it, which really, really, really changes things. So if they remove the third from last time, it's not surprising that we're going to have a banner jobs report for the United States in this case. And so the United States also had a massive miss. Their jobs numbers came in at 253,000 in April. 253,000, way, way, way more. But at the same time, remember, the US is larger than 10 times. It's like probably 11 times larger. So if Canada tried to drop 41 jobs, just do 10 to 1, that would be 410 in the United States. So job numbers in Canada, proportionate to the population, is way more than even the United States. Unbelievable, the banner jobs numbers that are coming in. Again, not saying this is a good number. It could be a sign that people are getting squeezed very, very badly. Let's take a look at the United States right here. Unemployment rate, 3.4. Let's go back all the way to where they started taking records back in the 50s. This is 2.5% that it had hit in 1953. 1953 was the last time it got that way. Look at this, and we have not been this low since 1953. Unbelievable, that is. So if you go to your Fred charts and take a look at it, there's always gray bars that show you what the recessions are. And if you notice, the number of people that are working, or let's just say the number of unemployment, is very low, the lowest, so the most people working just before a massive recession. And then a lot of people get laid off. And then the number goes very, very, very low. And then another recession, and a lot of people get laid off. and then more people get jobs, and then another recession. And this keeps happening over and over again. And so right now we're at such a low number that this is going to spike into something. It's going to be interesting. If we look at Canada, I only have a chart here that goes back to just 1999 or something like, but you can see that we are at a record low in Canada. Absolute record low. Every single job is taken according to these charts. And so you guys know what I just said is when it gets very, very low, we're heading into some interesting territory. Also, if you take a look at Canada, we also want to look at the spread between the 10-year bond and the 2-year bond. This is when it's going to dictate that something is wrong with the market. Look at us right now. We are having a massive inversion. So there was a very, very slight inversion with only 19 bips points. BPS basis points, very minor under at the end of 2019. But this is when the bond market was breaking in the United States. This is before the lockdowns all happened. So they knew that something was coming. They were smelling it a few months in advance. If you see, the inversion started happening in August and September, and the entire repo market collapsed in November. And so now that we are very, very far under, look at where we are now. We're sitting at negative 81. Please look at the United States now, and we're going to do their 10-year and 2-year treasuries. When we look at that, the United States in February was also 0.89 underwater. Okay. Now they're sitting at 0.48. Okay. So just to review, Canada is sitting down here at minus 81 basis points. And if we go look at this, it's at 48 basis points. So if you were going to say that we had to be in a positive territory, we can't be inverted, right? So what this basically means is if I was going to lend money to the government for 10 years, right? I'm taking on a lot of risk what could happen in 10 years versus if I just lent them money for 2 years. So if I got to give it to them for longer, there's more risk, so I should get more money. And now it's the opposite. If I get more money to lend it to them for a short amount of time, which is kind of weird, right? It seems backwards. And so when that happens, it's going to tell you that something is going on with the market. And when that happens, people are looking for that negative yield to know that something is very, very weird in the market and it's not going to do well. But here is the key to look at it. Please look at 1989. Do you notice that it does go inverted below that black line? But when it does go inverted, it starts making gains and starts being normal again, and then a recession hits. Please look at 2000. The inversion happens, the warning signal, the red flag goes off, then it goes back to normal in positive territory, recession hits. Please look again over in 2006. It inverted, it's smelling out the trouble, it's giving you the flag warning, it gets better again, and then whammo, we get hit by another recession. This also happened just in 2019, in August 2019, when we saw the Canadian one was reversed. Exactly the same. This was in August 2019, and by November 19, the repo market collapsed. But look at how inverted we are now. And so the fact that the United States is bouncing up where Canada is not necessarily a good thing, because as it comes back up, that's when a recession is going to smack you right between the eyes. So it's going to be an interesting time to follow. If you look, though, the United States has put 10 increases versus Canada's 8 increases. And we can see that our dollar here, you see here, it was at 80 cents last year in June. Now it's sitting at 74 cents, 6 cents less. And Canada imports a huge amount of stuff, not just from the United States, but from all around the world, all their food and equipment and everything. But everything is in American dollars when we bring it in. So if we're going to bring in 800 million and our dollar is down 6%, well, what is 6% of 800 billion? You're talking about tens and tens and tens of billions of dollars. Like $50 billion has to get added to the price of everything that we're going to buy because our dollar has gone down. If we would have kept raising rates along with the United States, our dollar would have been a lot stronger. So right now, you guys, if we look at the United States, their dollar, their worry is the debt ceiling that is happening right now. They're going into a lot of debt. So last fall, we remember their dollar on the DXY was hitting super high numbers, 113, 114 back last year. Now it is at 101. So it's come back down to earth for sure, which is very, very good, right? It really depends for who, but overall, it's settling higher than normal. But the DXY is what we use to measure the US dollar against an entire basket of currencies. So at the end of the day, America is doing almost the exact same thing as Canada, almost. Okay. I know that they're raising their rates farther, but when they raise their rates farther than Canada does, what happens in this exact instance? When that happens, their mortgage rates go higher, higher mortgage payments, but the cost of everything else stays the same. Whereas in Canada, when we do not keep upping our mortgage rates, we stop them, then our dollar loses value against the US dollar and everything we buy goes up in price. So the choice is, do you want your mortgage to be higher and more expensive, or do you want the price of everything else to be more expensive? Either way, it's going to cost you. And so that's where we are right now. Both countries identically the same. They're almost the same type of economies. In fact, like on a dark night, I can actually see the US from here. Like we're that close. And so when we're talking about this, what are both countries facing? We're both facing the exact same thing. We have very, very, very high amount of people working. That is causing some issues. They want less people working. They want no wage increases anymore. And we can see a lot of part-time work happening, which, like I said, is people that are probably getting second jobs. And a lot of part-time work could be a lot of the new immigrants and refugees that are coming into both countries. They're both facing some really serious stuff. And since we have very, very high debt in Canada and the United States, both of them sitting, depends how you measure it, 125% of GDP, 130% of GDP, it's going to leave them very, very vulnerable for what's going to be happening in the next 18 months. So this type of information is to help you guys be smarter about your decisions on how we're going to move forward. It's very hard today because you're hearing a lot of people on one camp going, the market is going to crash, and they're not even kind of moderate. They're just like, it's going to be Armageddon. The whole world is going to end and we're just going to be eating rice, okay? And then the other side is like, no, it's going to go to the moon, and everything. And so how do you stand in the middle of these two people on blowhorns yelling at you? And this is where I try to give you some information so you can make an educated decision based on your experience and what you can learn. When you can look at the charts, there are certain things that are predicted really, really, really well for decades and decades and decades. And then there's some things that just make sense. And so we want to always make sure that you're preserving your capital. And by that, I'm saying not just taking your dollars and putting them in the bank account. What does that mean? It doesn't mean about taking your dollars and putting it under your mattress. This $1 bill here was a day's wage 100 years ago. And now people wouldn't work for you for a minute for $1 in the States. So what happened? They just printed so much of it. So it's not about taking your paper dollars and sticking it under your mattress. That's not what it is. It's about, imagine buying some kind of an asset. If we're talking about gold or silver or a house or something that you cannot just duplicate on a computer and email. I want you to think things in purchasing power, because one thing that is for sure, especially with the debt ceiling in the States coming up, Canada's printing like a drunken sailor. So is the majority of other countries. We all know that this is coming. Huge inflation is going to be here for a long time. So you got to figure out ways so that you can preserve your purchasing power. Forget about saving dollars. Study the countries that have had high inflation or currently are facing high inflation, and study what they do to preserve your money by buying things that you're going to need. Sounds stressful. I'm going to tell you some of the things I do, but I'm not a financial advisor. But I always suggest people have gold, silver, have an emergency fund. I like some things like stocking up on it. If you have a big family and you use a lot of toothpaste, toilet paper, canned food, whatever, all of that stuff is going up. I think my best investment last year was canned potatoes because they went up 50% in price in the past year. I don't have any other investments that went up 50%. So stock up on the things that you need, because there will be some bumps in the road. We had some massive miracles this year with the weather, what Germany did with the fertilizer and stuff, but we can't count on miracles in harvesting from years and years. So, always build yourself up to make sure that you and your family are going to be okay. I mean, at the end of the day, this is all that we're here to do, right? That we're here to take care of our families. Anyway, you guys, I wish you the very, very best. There's going to be a rocky time, but this is not all doom and gloom, because they say that luck favors the prepared. And so what we're trying to do is to prepare you, because the best deals of most of your lifetimes. If you're under 45, this is some of the best deals that you're ever going to get your hands on. So if we're being very prudent over the next couple of years, it could dictate the next couple decades. I am ready and I'm excited about it. And I hope you're excited too. All right, guys. Love you. I'll talk to you soon.